Hey, what is up guys, Marcy here, back to do another video, and this is the second time I've actually commentated this video. I did want to bring this to you all a little bit sooner, but unfortunately I recorded that video and didn't press record, so that was a little unfortunate. Anyways, I want to inform you all that the Megapede crash has been fixed in R19. The latest iteration is R19E. That is going to be the final version because the Megapede has finally fixed. The reason why I have gone to this many different versions is because we've been trying to fix this Megapede crash, which has been a thing for over 1.5 years or longer. So it was utmost priority to fix that. I was never going to finish R19 until the Megapede crash has been resolved. So there you go, that's nice to know. You can now build Megapedes without fear of the game crashing. That was a bug in 1.02 plus. And there's been 2 additional changes besides that in the final version of R19, and that it has to do with the Tiberium agitation on the Ravagers. Now, the Ravagers will individually do 1,000 damage. Each member will do 1,000 damage instead of one member doing the whole 3,000 damage. So for each member that's lost, the effectiveness of the Tiberium agitation will be a little less. Because it was a little bit oppressive. Now the funny thing about that is the rush in R19 is actually worse than it is in R18 because the units got a 10% speed nerf. The advanced articulators confer a little bit less to traveler infantry. Everything else, the ability is the same. The attack range of the normal weapon is a little bit more, but that has nothing to do with the ability range. So that's crazy. We found a rush that was super oppressive because of the Tiberium agitation change, but no one really explored it. Now that has been nerfed. Besides that, there is maybe 1 or 2 things changed under the hood, like for example the Megapede, when you go into formation preview, will not play that segment spawn sound anymore. I would like to give a big thanks to the Hostile Negotiator for helping me with that fix. I used his Megapede files for that. He has a tremendous archive of files and fixes, and he has been extremely helpful to me throughout this patch and also during the 4K mod development as well. He was responsible for the shader stuff that was changed in the 4K mod. But really happy about that. Besides that, before I get commentating into this game, there was one other thing which I forgot. Oh yeah, the Cabals as well now can path through each other. Before, the Cabal members just would bug sometimes. Now they're like all other infantry. So this game here is going to be me against Phoenix. I'm playing a Scrin mirror, and as you can see, a lot is happening in this match so far. I did lose my engineer early on, so that's a little bit unfortunate. I did deploy my drone ship in a rather peculiar position, as you can see. I've deployed it in a position that you really ever see. And this is because I'm going to take over my spike. It's going to move my MCV a little bit closer to the tip spike for me to drop down a portal and grab that back. I did manage to clean up the disintegrator squad. Now if you want to kill buzzers, if you want to kill buzzers, just make descents as Scrin, because they do kill them one-on-one. And I'm going to use this extended build radius of the drone ship and tier 2 to get a warp sphere closer to my opponent's base. As you can see, I've got a tier 2 and a warp sphere there. I didn't catch my EMP. That was a little bit of a mistake there. I reckon I should have built a second engineer. So, you know, looking back at this game, that was probably one of the biggest mistakes of this match. So I've got these dev tanks coming in, disintegrators as well, just as cannon fodder. I've got 2 corruptors, a nice mix of units, not your typical Scrin mirror so far. And Phoenix, of course, he is going to be in his expansion in this game. He is going to be going for a 3rd refinery. Drops a photon cannon, but I've already got these corruptors coming in. He's going to have a hard choice. Is he going to build photon cannons or buzzer hives? If he doesn't build buzzer hive, then these descents are going to go almost uncontested. He's got a gunwalker there, and this dev tank now is starting to do damage on these photon cannons. I need to remove that defense of his. He's now building descents of his own, but I brought along corruptors. Corruptors not only good at healing other Scrin units, but I can also kill infantry like descents incredibly effectively. Disintegrators here causing so many problems. Now if I were him, I would have just thrown down an infestation hive on that tip field if the descents had went on that tip. Does use the buzzer swarm. Actually that was just a corruptor. It does take out the disintegrators. 2 dev tanks of him. I'm trying to focus those down before he can have the ability to charge up his units, but he uses the EMP, something that I should have had to counter his. I was forced to use my stasis shield. He can still use his. He's got a portal there. He can probably build his stasis and counter me with his own. And I need to be wary of that now. That's why I'm starting to split up my forces, so I don't get hit by that stasis and surrounded, which would happen. Refinery also as well gets stuck in that stasis. I could have killed that Rev. That was a smart placement of the stasis shield. Now, he hasn't been building from his second warp field while this has all been happening. I'm going to start focusing down these harvesters and going to get out of there relatively soon. Very frantic engagement this. I'm here on this Tiberium with these dev tanks, so if they're ever low on tib, I can just charge from his own Tiberium. And those dev tanks will be infinitely charged up with that green beam. Green beam does significantly more damage. I can't remember from the top of my head, but it may even as well increase the fire rate of the dev tank. And these devs are going to get out of there because he's now starting to build up the synths, and I've lost all my corruptors. I've got 2 of my own desynths there, and I'm just being chased by these pesky desynths. And the response to this as well for me is going to be none other than the Ravager squad. Now, the Ravager did get a little bit of a range buff in R19, so that's going to make them a little bit better for dealing with infantry like disintegrators and shock troopers. So I'm going to move in these Ravagers. We also have the Tiberium agitation, which works on corruptors and dev tanks. Now, one other change in R19 will be that the tib agitation will work normally now on these corruptors and dev tanks. In previous 1.2 patches, it only dealt 50% of the tib agitation damage to Scrin units. Now that only applies to the Mechapede head, so you will only be able to deal 50% damage to the Mechapede head, just because we don't want Ravagers oppressing Scrin as Trial 59. But I deem it fair to use these Ravagers in their current form with the 3,000 damage total if there's 3 out of 3 members in the squad. So that means you can kill a Corruptor if you've got a full Ravager squad or dev tank. So these Corruptors are chasing back my Ravs. Now, if that was the latest R19, that Corruptor there would have just died in one shot to the Ravager, but I'm going to have to force out some additional damage onto these Corruptors. I do just about barely get that. And I've now been able to tech up all the way to tier 3. I've got these Ravagers out. I've got these dev tanks still on tier 2, but I've got my tier 3 now, and I'm going to start bringing out the big guns. Going to start queuing those tripods, which are integral part of a Scrin mirror. Use my Tiberium vibration scan. That's really good for Scrin factions in a mirror because you can detect Mechapedes, because Mechapedes in the game files I consider to have Tiberium. Maybe because of the toxin segment on the Mechapede. I suppose that's why, but it's really good because you can see on the minimap where the opponent's Mechapedes are. You can even, in a Mecha v Mecha fight, get the headshot on your opponent's Mechapedes with that Tiberium vibration scan, even when those are in the fog of war. I'm going to start cleaning up his scouts, so I don't give him any clues as to what my transition would be, but I did get one tripod stranded out in the middle of the map there, which is a little bit unfortunate. I'm now queuing tripods from 2 warp spheres. My MCV is also going out for an expansion, but I see that I'm a little bit behind here. Phoenix seems to have a larger army than me. He's also got these shock troopers, which when uncontested can crush your army. He's got a lot of those shock troopers, gunwalkers, dev tanks, everything really that he's going to be pushing me with. My only defense against this is just one tripod, so it's a good time for him to push into my base. He can also use the stasis shield because previously he didn't use it on me. Didn't capture the EMP, so he's not going to destroy that because it's just not under my control. Force field generator is now online for me. I've got these Ravagers out on the map. I'm going to start using those to kill the Corruptors with the tib agitation. And I'm doing a smart thing here, which is by targeting down all of the Gunwalkers, because I know if I can target those down, my Ravagers can start working on these Shock Troopers. So as you can see here, I'm deliberately focus firing the Gunwalkers. All the Gunwalkers fall, which means my Ravager squads can now start giving a really good defense against these Shock Troopers. And you can see this range buff coming into effect. It's about a 30% range increase for the Ravagers attack, and those are really good in these Scrin mirrors at countering Shock Troopers. I feel like Ravagers and Shock Troopers now have an integral part to play in Scrin mirrors, because I think that the Ravager is the hard counter to the Shock Troopers, and the Shock Troopers are really good against tripods in this patch. The Shock Troopers fire a little bit more reliably. Now, what I mean by that is if they come up against a moving target, they'll just shoot that target now without hesitating. Before they wouldn't, they would struggle to do so, because they had something called acceptable aim delta, and it wasn't assigned for the Shock Trooper with discs. It was assigned for the Shock Trooper without it. And that basically makes the infantry unit, or any unit, less likely to hit stuff that's moving very quickly if it's a low value. But in the case of the shock trooper, it was 0 because it wasn't set. But yeah, that's a bit of modding knowledge. I'm floating a lot of funds here. I'm going to move into his base with my drone ship. I've got these shock troopers in the middle of the map to contend with, and the response to those, as always, is going to be this Ravager squad. I think he already used his stasis shield. He can blink on top of the Ravager and kill it quickly, but Ravs do splash damage, so that is also a risk for him to take. Ravager now up to that double vet status, almost a heroic Ravager. Those have been more common recently. Remains to be seen how common they'll be with the recent nerf to their agitation ability. But yeah, overall, they're I don't know if they're any better or worse than R18. It's just in R18, no one chose to build them, even though they were pretty decent back then too. But in these mirrors where there's no hammerheads or venoms to contend with, infantry is more viable. There's no hammerheads with AP ammo just, you know, cutting through your infantry in mere seconds. These corruptors will be forced back by the tripod. I did lose my base, too much of it. I was focused on killing those shock troopers. That's often the case with me. I am more fixated on winning big engagements rather than you know, looking to see if my base is under attack. I can sometimes lose all my harvesters to a couple of bikes for that reason, but as long as I win the big fight, in the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So I focus on winning the big engagements. I've got this huge army here consisting of everything, as you can see, besides shock troopers. I've got Ravagers to counter his shocks, lots of buzzer hives for Phoenix, dev tank runs forward, and those buzzers are a problem for my disintegrators here. I'm using these disintegrators, I'm forcing them in. I should have really had those on whole ground starts in the back, but I let them run in. His dev tanks are using their charged beam, however, so that's really good for me. It means he's not going to have that extra DPS to kill the tripods. He does focus down one tripod immediately, and his army is looking incredibly menacing. He uses his stasis shield on my army, and my stasis shield is just about recharged as well. So that wasn't long ago since I used the last stasis. The advantage of using stasis shields early on is you can recycle it and use it more than once if the game goes on long enough. There's Ravagers in the back of my base doing some damage, but they should really be in this engagement. Not that they'd accomplish anything at this point, because there is a maze of buzzer hives and you can't really do anything against buzzer hives. I don't have any targets there either to kill with the Ravs, maybe 1 or 2 dev tanks, but the tripods are the meat of my army, and this goes to show as well the importance of tripods in these Scrin mirrors. But in this game here, it stood out to me because there was a really interesting base push in the start, and it really became an interesting match with, you know, Ravagers and shock troopers. From the very beginning, it was action-packed, and this fight is going to come down to the wire. I just about take out the last of his dev tanks because I got a heroic disintegrator, and their drone ship will be moving forward as well. And Phoenix here with that will call the GG. I did the base push because I was simply too far behind to set up an expansion. That's what you should do as well if you find yourself in a similar spot. If you're too far behind in getting down an expansion, your best bet is to just push in with your drone ship. The reason you push in with your drone ship is so you can place down portals to queue disintegrators and put down those buzzer hives. Buzzer hives can counter your opponent's buzzer hives from killing your disintegrators, and plus they provide decent cover as well for your tripods if you're getting like spammed by disins. So they're an excellent way to complement your army, and I think in every base push and every engagement at the end, you should bring along a drone ship, because your opponent will have his defender's advantage. So if you don't have yours, you're going to need to overwhelm him with a much larger army. So yeah, guys, hope you all enjoyed this game. I just wanted to provide a game for you all to watch. I've got more coming, so if you liked it, then please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and even consider throwing down a like and a comment if you want to as well. I really do appreciate that. Anyways, guys, and I should also mention as well, I would like to thank all my patrons as well for supporting me on that. And if you would like to head on over to my Patreon and become a supporter, I would really also appreciate that as well. You can do whatever amount you want. And my audio just stopped. Hopefully there's no such bugs, because before I had issues with my mic audio not recording. Hopefully this time it does record. Anyways, guys, this is giving me Master Leaf. Peace out.